Your toddler waves goodbye perfectly calmly. 10 minutes later, they fall apart. Not when you leave, after the room gets quiet, after the toy stops working, after their mind finally notices what their hand already waved goodbye to. At the door, everything looked fine. You had your bag in your hand. You were already bracing for tears. But your toddler looked up, lifted one small hand, and waved like they understood the whole moment. You walked out feeling relieved, maybe even proud. Maybe this was finally one of those easy goodbyes parents hope for. It makes sense. Maybe they were distracted. Maybe they were becoming more independent. Maybe the transition barely touched them. Then the message comes from the adults staying behind. They were playing quietly. Then, out of nowhere, they collapsed on the floor, sobbing like the goodbye had only just happened. That is the strange part. And the strange part is the clue. Because those 10 quiet minutes may reveal something deeper than a delayed tantrum. They may show how a toddler's mind turns a simple goodbye into something far more complex. Memory, expectation, attachment, and the first difficult work of holding someone in mind when that person is no longer in the room. At first, the goodbye looks almost too clean. They know the routine. Someone says, "Say bye-bye." They wave. You wave back. The door closes. Then the room continues as if nothing major has changed. The blocks are still on the rug. The light still falls across the floor. The toy truck is still under the coffee table. The adult staying behind is still close enough to reach. If someone walked in at that exact moment, they might say, "They're doing great." And maybe they are. For a few minutes, they may really be okay. But being okay in the first minute does not mean the whole meaning has arrived. Toddlers can process a scene in layers. At this age, they are no longer living only inside the immediate second. Their memory is stronger. Their expectations are sharper. They know routines. They know familiar faces. They know that some people leave and come back. But the ability to notice a goodbye can grow faster than the ability to carry the feeling that comes after it. A toddler can understand the routine before they understand the absence. That is where the delay begins. When you first leave, their attention may stay attached to what is directly in front of them. They pick up the red block. They press the toy button again. They turn the same page twice. Their world becomes small enough to manage because play gives the mind a place to land. For a little while, that works. The toy holds their focus. The familiar room gives structure. The adult nearby keeps the moment from becoming empty all at once. Their brain does not have to face the full meaning of your absence immediately because their hands are still busy with something concrete. Then the small structure breaks. The tower falls. The sound from the toy stops. The adult staying behind steps into the kitchen for a glass of water. Your toddler looks up. They hear footsteps in the hallway, but the rhythm is wrong. They hold up a block toward the chair where you usually sit, waiting for your surprised little gasp. The chair is empty. That is when the room changes. Nothing dramatic happened on the outside. The furniture did not move. The door had already closed. The goodbye had already ended for everyone else. But inside the toddler, the meaning is just arriving. The event happened earlier. The realization arrives later. That gap is the whole story. For toddlers, safety is built through repeated patterns. They learn that when they look at you, you often look back. When they bring you a toy, you react. When they stumble, your voice changes. When they call, someone answers. These tiny loops happen so often that your presence becomes more than a person nearby. It becomes part of how the room feels organized. You become part of the pattern. So when you leave, the room may still be warm, familiar, and safe. But it no longer works in quite the same way. The blocks still stack. The book still opens. The toy still rolls. Yet the one person who gives many of those moments their emotional rhythm is no longer answering. The room looks the same. The response has changed. This is where attachment research gives us a useful lens, without needing to turn the moment into a diagnosis. In Mary Ainsworth's work on early attachment, researchers were not only watching whether a child cried when a caregiver left, they were watching something more subtle: how a young child used that caregiver as a secure base, what happened when that base was briefly removed, and how the child recovered when the caregiver returned. That matters because the timing of the crying is only one piece of the story. Some children protest immediately. Some keep exploring for a while. Some seem composed until a small break in attention makes the absence feel real. The deeper question is how the child organizes themselves when the familiar base is gone. A delayed cry can belong to that pattern. It can be the moment attention finally lets go of the toy and turns toward the relationship. The cry carries information. It tells you where the child's expectation broke. By the time the crying begins, the child may have noticed several small absences at once. Your face is missing from the chair. Your voice is missing from the hallway. Your reaction is missing from the block they just held up. The room still contains people, light, and toys. But one familiar loop has gone quiet. For a toddler, that is a lot of emotional work. This is what practice can look like in a young nervous system. A child is trying to master one of the hardest early lessons of love. Someone can be gone and still exist for them. Adults live inside that idea so easily that we forget how extraordinary it is. We leave rooms. We answer later. We know that people continue existing when they are out of sight. We can miss someone and still function. We can picture a person in memory without needing their face in front of us. A toddler is still building that bridge. And sometimes, memory makes the missing stronger before it makes it easier. A younger child may cry because a visible person disappeared. A toddler can cry because the invisible person is still very real inside the mind. They are comparing two versions of the world, the room with you in it, and the room without your immediate response. That comparison can arrive slowly. First, they glance toward the hallway. Then they pause. Then they hold up a toy and wait. Then their body goes still. Then the sound comes out before the words exist. The feeling is late because it had to travel through memory first. That is a huge leap, and it is also why the reaction can look confusing. 1 minute they were stacking blocks. The next minute, they pushed them away. The blocks did not suddenly become upsetting. They simply stopped being strong enough to hold attention against the feeling that had finally arrived. The toy was a bridge. Then the bridge ended. A useful way to understand this is through expectation. Toddlers are constantly learning what usually happens next. If they point, someone names the object. If they fall, someone comes closer. If they make a funny sound, someone smiles. The world becomes understandable through repeated responses. When you leave, those predictions do not switch off immediately. For a few minutes, your toddler may still act as if the familiar response is available. They may look up after stacking a block, waiting for your face. They may walk toward the hallway, then stop. They may bring a toy to the adult staying behind, then pull it back, because the response is kind, but it is not the response they were searching for. That tiny mismatch can open the floodgate. The child expected one emotional rhythm and received another. Young children are deeply tuned to response. Research on early caregiver interaction has shown how sensitive babies and young children can be when expected emotional feedback is interrupted. The situation is not identical to a goodbye at the door, but the larger idea helps explain the moment. Children seek more than physical presence. They seek the living pattern of response. Your glance, your voice, your timing, your return, your particular way of making the world feel known. When that pattern pauses, the child may need time to notice. Once they notice, they may need help letting the feeling move through them. This is where goodbyes become more important than they first appear. A clear goodbye may still hurt, but it gives the toddler a real sequence their mind can learn from. You leave. They feel the absence. Someone helps them through it. You come back. Over time, that sequence teaches something powerful. The story does not end at the door. The feeling rises, and then it changes. The person disappears from view, and later returns. Absence begins to have a shape. You are helping their nervous system learn a pattern it can borrow later. That is the role parents often never get to see. The goodbye is not only a moment of leaving, it is also a repeated lesson in time, trust, and repair. Each return teaches the mind that love can stretch across a gap. This is where the behavior becomes more amazing than sad. The calm wave was real. The later collapse was real too. Together, they may show two developing abilities moving at different speeds. The social part of the child knows the ritual. The emotional part is still learning what the ritual means. The hand can perform goodbye quickly. The nervous system may need 10 more minutes to understand what goodbye feels like. The hand waves first. The heart catches up later. And when it does, the feeling may come all at once because toddlers do not yet sort emotions neatly. Missing can look like anger. Sadness can sound like panic. Confusion can turn into refusal. A child who is peacefully stacking blocks may suddenly push them away because the world inside them changed faster than they could explain. At this age, emotions often arrive as weather, but weather tells you what the system is carrying. So when your toddler suddenly falls apart after 10 calm minutes, the deeper story may be that something very advanced is happening inside a very young mind. They are holding you in memory. They are noticing the difference between presence and absence. They are learning that a person can be unavailable and still important. They are beginning to understand that love does not vanish when the body leaves the room. That is enormous. And it is not tragic. It is one of the first invisible bridges the mind learns to build. For a toddler, the world is becoming bigger than what they can touch. A closed door is no longer just wood and hinges. An empty chair is no longer just furniture. A quiet hallway is no longer just silence. These things start to carry meaning because the child's mind is connecting what is seen with what is remembered. That is the real climax of the delayed cry, not the tears. The connection underneath them. The delay shows memory working. The delay shows expectation forming. The delay shows attachment stretching across time. The delay shows a child learning how to stay connected to someone they cannot see. This is part of how a young mind learns what people are for. Not only feeding, not only holding, not only playing, but making the world feel organized, familiar, and safe enough to explore. On its own, delayed crying after a goodbye is common in many toddlers. It can appear as memory, independence, attachment, and regulation develop at different speeds. Every child grows on their own timeline. If separation distress becomes extreme, lasts for long periods, worsens sharply, or appears alongside broader concerns in sleep, eating, communication, or daily functioning, it may be worth raising gently with a pediatric professional. For one ordinary delayed cry, though, the most useful interpretation is understanding. So the next time your toddler waves goodbye calmly, plays for 10 minutes, and then suddenly falls apart, you may see the scene differently. They were moving from the visible goodbye to the invisible meaning beneath it. They held the room together for a while. They followed the ritual. They played inside the pause. Then something quiet became clear. You were gone, and still you mattered. This is development happening in real time. They are learning how to keep loving someone they cannot see. And sometimes, that lesson arrives 10 minutes late.